Hey Paula, that you?
It is me. How is my Miss Delia?
I'm doing well.
You are
Just scrambling.
scrambling because
Yeah.
it started to be the end of the year.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
Oh, crazy, crazy amount of things.
Well, welcome everybody to Workforce Wednesday. Um, we'll get started here in a few minutes. You have tuned in to see Workplace ESL in action, brought to you by Delia Watley of Irving ISD and Nancy Morano of the Wilkinson Center. I hope that you enjoy what we're going to do today. Um, just go through a little housekeeping slides. I'm not even going to do the slides. We'll just go ahead and talk about the Zoom stuff. Remember, you got your little control panel down on the bottom. If you hover your mouse down there, on the left-hand side, you'll see the little microphone icon and you'll see a little video icon. So that's where you're going to control, one of the places you control your mic and your video camera. The red slash, of course, means that you are not being heard and not being seen. If you're having any issues with either your camera or your microphone, that little caret next to them will allow you to get into your controls and pick which device that you're using and do a little bit of troubleshooting. If you are still having a little bit of technical difficulty, Ms. Paula is going to drop in uh, a little message in the text, and you can use that phone number or that website to reach out to the call center, the DEPDC call center, and they'll be able to help you out. Make sure that you have your participant pod open so you can see who is in the room with us. It's also where you're going to make sure that you change your name so that we can give you PD credit for being here today. Your name will always be the one on the top. If it's not your PD portal name, then you're just going to click on the little dots by your name and go down and select change name, put it in, say save or enter or whatever it says, and then you should be good to go. You also probably want to have your chat pod open so you know what's being shared in the chat. That's where you can ask your questions. And the other thing we probably want to make sure we're aware of is your little reaction button. So if you need to raise your hand or you need to send Delia a heart or Nancy a thumbs up, you know where you're doing that from. Um, so with that said, I am going to turn it over to Ms. Delia Watley and Nancy Morano, and we'll see what they have to say.
Thank you, Wayne. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for everybody being here and supporting. I'm Nancy Moreno, Director of Programs at Wilkinson Center, and then here with Miss Delia. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. So today for on our agenda, super exciting workplace and talking about explaining the basics and logistics of workplace sites, providing examples of a workplace partnership, and discussing ways to recruit employers and participants. Also defining what is workplace literacy and all its components and understanding how to complete MOUs and document MSG type 4s and outcomes for your workplace sites. Also, we'll be touching on learning how workplace sites benefit both the employer and service provider, and then discussing best practices and some of the challenges that we've faced in developing these partnerships and how to really strengthen them. So now I'll hand it over to Delia so then she can shine some light on our amazing consortium here in Dallas.
Good afternoon. Thank you again. I'm looking at some of the names. I appreciate you guys coming out and supporting. And hopefully you'll leave with something that you can use in your positions that you currently hold. Well, Nancy and I operate currently under Workforce Solutions Dallas AEL, under a consortium of 4 providers. There are 2 school districts, and that's Richardson ISD, and then the one I am in, Irving ISD. There's a nonprofit community center, that's where Nancy is housed, Wilkinson Center. And then our college board, Dallas College, Community College. All of this is under the umbrella of Workforce Solutions Greater Dallas. We have been providing services as a consortium since 2014. Our first employer site was the Sheraton Hotel, and that was a great partnership with Sheraton. It was with our hospitality class, and where we combined students that were trying to get the hospitality certification with employees that were already working there at the Sheraton. Currently, we have 9 employer sites. 2 of them are manufacturing sites. 2 are suppliers. We have our transportation and logistics, public safety, and healthcare. Okay. With Irving ISD and Wilkinson Center combined, we are currently serving, as I mentioned, AirVent, Cintas Corporation. So 2 of these are manufacturers, 2 are suppliers. One's transportation logistics, that's Kinco. Then we have the Hotel Westin Irving Convention Center. We even have a public servant, the Irving Police Department. We have Taylor Farms, responsible with packaging salads and fresh fruits and vegetables. And then we have the F&A group. As you can see, there's a wide range of industries, and you almost would think that we went out and selected which industries we were going to place so that we could have this variety, but no, it just happened that way. And you'll learn why this is so important, why this is such a benefit to us to have these various industry clusters within the workforce, within these workplace classes. As far as employer recruitment and engagement, this is where Workforce Solutions, being part of our board, benefits us so much, because the board plays an important part in identifying and recruiting these employer partners for us. They're the first point of contact with these employers. Recruitment takes place. Some of these members serve on our board. But we are tasked as Workforce Solutions Greater Dallas, they're tasked with meeting the needs of the employers. And so we have a large base of employers that we can draw from. AEL flyers, we can send them out. Employers are looking at our website constantly, the Workforce Solutions website. So we get to put out information. We just created the flyer that you see on the screen that we'll be using. We're really excited about it. It is a promotional flyer to recruit employers specifically for these workplace classes. We also have developed an employer packet that we will be sending out to employers. Within that packet, you'll have an introduction letter to the employers. We checked with CASAS, and CASAS approved us using their employer survey. These are some great surveys that they have that we can use for employers to gauge interest. And then there's an example of an MOU that we'll include in the packet, as well as an example of the progress report of students. There you see a flyer that is for a provider, sort of custom made for that. This particular one was for Irving ISD, to reach out to the partners that we were trying to attract. And notice when you see free classes for your employees, who's not going to read that? All right. Next.
All right. Thank you, Delia.
Mm-hmm.
So now we'll talk about what is workplace literacy for anyone that's new to AEL and why is it so important? So workplace literacy is all about giving employees the skills they need to thrive on the job. It goes beyond just reading and writing. It's about making sure they can truly understand, communicate, and apply information in their everyday work task. Our consortium sees workplace literacy as a foundation for our success for our community. So both employees and their employers. Here are some of the key skills we focus on. So reading and understanding. Obviously, this is super important in the employees understanding the safety manuals, any HR documents. It always is difficult, especially with some of our manufacturing partners. They have very expensive or dangerous equipment on the floor. So if employees don't know how to comprehend those manuals, it could lead to, release from employment and not retention. Also, we have writing clearly and professionally, including tasks like completing forms, taking notes, or sending emails to supervisors. Also using numbers and data. This can refer to measurements, time tracking, or understanding their pay stubs. Feel like this is really important for any like HR documents or their benefits, being able to really understand those, that paperwork. And then one of my favorite, digital literacy. Obviously, in today's world, everything is involved around technology. So really being able to educate the employees on how to use tablets, any applications specifically for their employer, or even computers. So definitely, being able to know how to clock in using the technology that the site has. And then verbal communication. This includes like asking questions, expressing concerns, or participating in team discussions. So employers might have really great work ethic with their employees, but maybe they can't communicate with their team or be able to report incidents on the floor. So this is delaying them from being able to get that promotion. So these are all skills that are needed in order to provide a successful environment and culture for the employer. And so obviously when employees feel more confident in these skills, employers also benefit. So now we'll go into why are all these so important and why it matters and how you can sell this to an employer that you're working with. And we're talking about this real world impact on job performance, workplace culture, and employee success. Obviously, strong literacy skills in the workplace can lead to fewer errors and misunderstandings. This leads like when employees can clearly read, write, and understand instructions, safety protocols, and signage, they're less likely to make costly or dangerous mistakes. Also increasing efficiency and productivity. Can be completed faster with fewer delays when communication is smooth and expectations are clear with the employees. Also, just better teamwork and communication. Strong literacy helps employees work better together, resolving problems faster, and feeling confident in participating in team discussions. That leads for maybe some employees feel that they can't express themselves or feel like they have an accent or can't pronounce words correctly. So maybe this timids them from being able to speak up or give their ideas in team meetings. So this is to be able to help build their self-confidence as well. Also improving safety and compliance. Like we had mentioned, understanding workplace policies and safety guidelines leads to a safer environment for everyone. Also, greater confidence in just job satisfaction. When employees can fully understand and engage with their work, they feel more capable and are more likely to stay and grow in that role. Our consortium, we've seen firsthand how even small improvements in literacy skills can make a huge difference in the work experience. for both the employee and the employer. So now I'll hand it over to Delia again, and she can dive into, as a provider, how do you actually create and facilitate this cohesive environment?
All right, so this part is very important for our program and for really throughout our consortium. Making students feel comfortable in the classroom. And you can imagine with workplace classes, you're actually taking classes under the shadow of your bosses. And so you're sort of putting yourself out there when you sign up and enroll for the classes. And we know this. And that's why when we're creating the community that would be within the walls of that training room, we want to make sure that our students are comfortable. We want to make sure that there's a non-threatening environment. For the most part, in our classrooms, the employers come in when they're invited because we want the students to feel foster an open, non-judgmental communication, recognize and accommodate different learning styles because some may have, if you're holding a class at a workplace site, you really can't divide up levels unless you'll have three here and three here or two here and one here. So everybody's in the class with different levels. And so it's important that you train that teacher to be able to deal in multi-level classroom environments because they're all in there together. And so you have to make each one feel comfortable, especially your low literacy learners that are there. You want to make sure that they're just as comfortable as those that may know a little bit more, for example, English than they do. Also, you want to make sure that everyone's inclusive and accessible language because sometimes in these workplace classrooms, you do have a variety of languages spoken, and you want to make sure that each individual is honored and it's important. I love to see, when we have these classrooms, maybe you have employees that normally don't spend a lot of time with each other. So they're making friendships and building relationships within these classrooms. And now possibly they may go to lunch together. They may take a break together. And so you get the honor of being able to pull these employees together so that they can have more support on the job than they had before. You want to make sure that you promote lifelong learning. So you want to offer other opportunities for these students, not just this classroom. You want to promote your other classes. Maybe you have a distance learning class. Maybe you have a class site that's near where one of the employees lives. Well, you want to open up those classes and make them available for those students as well.
Okay. Now we'll go into the instructional design. So our consortium instructional design is built with both the employee and employer in mind. A popular tool is used that we use is Burlington English career modules, particularly in manufacturing and logistic, which directly support our participants on the job. To make learning even more relevant, we adapt curriculum using real employer material. Things like safety manuals, HR documents, and new employee handbooks. So participants are practicing with language and material they actually encounter at work. So this is definitely most important, one of the most important steps in your discovery call with your employer. Really asking those questions of what are the gaps that they're seeing with their staff and how can we support closing those gaps. So for example, with one of our partners, they collaborated with their HR department and put together a list of vocabulary that and common questions that staff had. And so we were able to add that into the curriculum. So we also focus on contextualized instruction, which means using real workplace examples to teach language skills. For instance, we love doing role playing in scenarios of team huddles or reading work orders so they can feel more confident in being able to vocalize and give their input on the job. And so we've seen that the role playing has really helped them get out of their shell, and maybe they were well at speaking English, but being able to practice out loud and presenting to the class was helping build up that confidence. In addition to language, we embed soft skill development like teamwork, attendance, and respectful communication, which employers consistently say are just as important as technical skills. So those soft skills definitely are super crucial. And I'm sure all of us have experienced of like emails, like being able to send an email or uploading a document. And so that's why we feel like those soft skills are really important and want to keep them in the curriculum. So every site obviously is going to be different. So we make sure our instructional design remains flexible and adaptable to work sites and employer needs, whether that's adjusting schedules, classroom layouts, or just communication style to best support both the employee success and the employer's goals. So for example, one of our partners, Fridays ended up being a really, really busy day for deliveries. And so we had to provide extra hours to make up for employees because they weren't able to leave the floor at that time. So it's really just remaining flexible and open to make sure we meet those goals for the employees and employer. Alrighty, so now we'll jump into the important stuff. So our documentation. So when launching a workplace literacy program, one of the most important fundamental steps is creating a strong MOU between the provider and the employer. So the MOU outlines key expectations and shared responsibilities. In Dallas, we focus on four main components, being class times and locations. These are mutually agreed upon based on the employer schedules and space availability. So one of our employers doesn't have space for classrooms, so we host the class at one of our locations versus our other employer does have a classroom space, so we'll host it there. So it all just depends what your employer has available. Employer responsibilities, this might include providing, like I said, classroom space, supporting student outreach, recruiting the participants for us, or even offering incentives like paid class time or providing meals during the class. So we do have an employer that once the participant completes all of their hours, they receive a $300 stipend at the end. So it's all just depending what resources you or the employer has. Also, provider responsibilities. So as the service provider, we take ownership on the curriculum, instruction, assessments, and reporting outcomes to both the employer and funding agency. So qualified goals. It's critical to align the business goals with learner outcomes as well. So, for example, an employer might want to have improved communication among their team leads. We then build the curriculum and assessments around that goal. And then really getting specific, what does that actually mean? Do you want them to submit daily email reports, submitting a form, or being able to report updates on their project during a staff meeting, and then being able to create that into the curriculum? So having all of these pieces clearly defined builds trust, sets clear expectations, and ensures that both sides are committed to employee success. And this is an example that we have of a realistic learning goals on the MOUs. And so this is an example that we have with our consortium. And if you see here, the summary includes all of the class schedules, the number of student or participants in the class, And then you'll go into the specific goals for the employees. So for example, this one was a 50 job specific vocabulary that they were able to say orally and write down. Another one was send at least one professional email. Another is at least verbally summarize at least 3 workplace safety procedures, and then reporting an incident report. So it all just depends what the needs are for your employer and what would they like to see this cohort grow in.
You have a
Yeah.
question from the chat, Nancy. Angela wanted to know if this is an on-site program in a business premises or for a specific time. If so, how long usually?
Of course. So it all varies the different employers. So we have one employer that we do offer classes on site. So for our Taylor Farms, they have a classroom space and they'll come in after shift change and sit in on the class. Compared to one of our manufacturing partners, they don't have space. So then they come to our location and we teach classes there once a week. And so it does vary. We can have classes 13 weeks, 14, 16. It all just depends the availability from the employer as well. So if it's a busy season and we know that they have a lot of deliveries, then we can see if maybe 13 weeks is going to be best because we're going into the holiday season.
And then also, Nancy, site that we're getting ready to open or expand, we already are conducting a workplace site with Kinco. But because of the success of that workplace site, they wanted other employees to be able to participate, but they're spread out regionally all across Texas through Dallas County, where they can't really drive to our spot. And so they've asked us to hold a virtual class where maybe somebody in DeSoto can attend, somebody in Grand Prairie can attend. And so we are exploring that idea as well to hold a virtual class for those throughout Dallas County because Dallas County is pretty big. And they may have only a few people at each of the employer sites that want to be a part of the ESL class. So that's an idea you may want to think about as well.
Yeah, so it really just depends your resources and the availability for the employer. So you really can make it your own and whatever fits your scenario. Okay, so this slide highlights how we track progress in our workplace literacy programs and aligning it to the MSG. At the beginning of each cohort, we work closely with the employer to define 4 to 5 measurable learning goals, as you saw in the MOU, specifically on what they would like to see their employees improve on. So these goals combine employment skills and literacy development. Like using job-specific vocabulary, completing workplace reports, safety procedures. So throughout the course, participants are assessed through class activities, quizzes, and pre and post assessments. So we had created an assessment based off of what the employer would like to see, and we did a pre and a post to really be able to see the gain because that's what the employer had asked for. And so these tools help us track individual progress while keeping the training tied to the employer's real world needs. At the end of the course, we provide each student with and their employer with a goal achievement report, as you can see here. This report is reviewed and signed by the provider and employer to confirm the progress. And we both agree that the employee did make progress in the class. And then a path to continued support if additional instruction is needed. So some of the employees really liked our classes and they want to take more. So then that opens a pathway for them to be able to join our ESL classes if they would like to continue outside of the workplace or when the class is over. So ultimately, this process ensures our program outcomes are meaningful, measurable, and aligned with both the learner's growth and the workplace expectations. Alrighty, so on this visual, you can see our consortium approach has been instrumental in building strong and sustainable workplace literacy programs. First, being part of the workforce board opens a lot of doors. So if you're not working with your local work board 100%, they're a key asset to you. We've been able to tap into a network of employer partners who are already engaged and ready to support educational incentives. So employer initiatives also play a big role. So some companies offer breakfast, lunch, or even paid time for employees to attend classes. These small gestures go a long way in boosting attendance and retention. Um, and we love to celebrate student successes with showcases where learners demonstrate their new skills in front of their peers, employers, and sometimes family members. So with one of our cohorts that just ended this spring, we had a small little graduation for them and really celebrated their win. The CEO came out, their manager, HR department came all out to support and celebrate, and they were able to share some testimonials. So the employer really got to see the value that these classes are bringing in the work culture that they're creating and that they're investing in their growth in the company. So it's really great to just showcase and see, what they're bringing. And just builds pride and confidence in general. In terms of logistics, we offer on-site or off-site cohorts based on obviously resources and what works best for the employer and employee. Sometimes this means adjusting obviously our own internal schedules to meet the needs of the different shift patterns. So, it might have different odd hours, or if like the hotel, we want to open a class, and so class will start from 7 a.m. So that's out of our usual time at Wilkinson, but we have staff that have availability for it. So that's what can make you different, is having that flexibility. So flexibility definitely is key. We also make sure our curriculum is industry specific, incorporating vocabulary and scenarios tied to that workplace, obviously provided by the employer. That happens through early conversations, obviously, with the employer and gathering those realistic materials like the manuals and the safety checklist. And then our instructor can use that to create the contextualized lessons. And finally, this is truly a two-way collaboration. Yes, we're helping upskill employees, but we're also connecting job seekers to companies that are hiring. So this is a great example of that collaboration. One of our providers, we were teaching workplace literacy on site with them, and now they also created a pipeline for our transportation and distribution IET graduates. So they're also hiring our participants through the IET program. So it's just really been able to grow that partnership and benefit both ways. So employers trust us, and that means we sometimes get earlier access to job openings and that our participants can benefit from. This whole wraparound model, it definitely does work, and we've seen real impact through it.
Okay, now Nancy mentioned why these programs are so important. And when you think about it, sometimes even with fluent English speakers, there are communication issues on the job. Well, you can only imagine if you're a struggling English speaker, where those breakdowns may actually increase. For example, there's the difficulty of understanding written instructions or emails, poor written communication, We've seen, and like I said, we've seen some challenges with fluent English speakers when it comes to writing emails and transporting information to one another in a understandable format. Also, there are struggles that may exist with basic math or data interpretation. You can definitely imagine that being a problem sometimes on the job for those that are struggling with English. Next, next. Also digital skills. Um, I laugh sometimes because that is an issue when you're looking over there at your partner and they're using like one finger doing that. Or you have that partner that's saying, "Can you help me with this? I'm trying to just click the button right there." So, digital skills gaps, those are things that need to be worked on in these workplace environments. Again, language barriers in multilingual environments. And safety. Safety is a big one because safety, somebody can end up in the hospital. And folks like Kinko, I remember going out for a site visit with Kinko, and we were just visiting. And they took us through like a 20-minute safety precaution. I'm like, I'm just visiting. But safety is very important to them. And as we were developing the curriculum for that particular site, that was one of the things they wanted us to lean in on. Next. All right. And so everything's not peachy when you're beginning to create your workforce partnerships, your workplace partnerships. There may be employee scheduling conflicts because it's time to get off work and you're ready to go home. You worked hard all day and you don't want somebody saying, hold on. We've got a class before you go home. We need you to come to class for about an hour, hour and a half. That for some folks, that's like no go. So, we have to work around those employee scheduling conflicts. Maybe we'll hold a class at a different time that may work better for them. Employer workflow. We can't expect the employer to shut down production for an hour and a half so the employees can come off the floor to go to class. They are trying to make a profit. So that could be a challenge. Disruption during the shift changes. You are holding a class and then there's a change in shift, and somebody might excuse themselves to go to the restroom and never return because they got pulled in on the floor. And that affects retention. Also, data sharing constraints. We need information from those participants that we have to enter into and we're held accountable for, enter into our database, but also the employer needs information. I had one employer had a long list of items that he wanted the teacher to sign off on, and one of them was when you come on our property, if you by chance have an accident, slip on the floor, even if it's because of our negligence, you can't hold us liable. And, I happily told the employer, we're not signing that, but, you just have to work through things like that when and if you can develop those good relationships on the front end, then you can tell that employer, we're not signing that. And they'll come back to you like this one did. And oh, okay, we'll scrap that one. Okay. Solutions. Again, flexible times. Even though my program may run from 8 to 4, and the employer says, those times are just not going to work for our employees. Well, we might have to have a class at 7 o'clock in the morning that meets at 7 o'clock in the morning. Maybe not 2 or 3 in the morning, but 7 o'clock in the morning, we can do that. We have some staff members. That's okay. They're fine with getting up and being at a site at 7 in the morning to hold a class. So we have to be flexible with the class times. Workflow impact, again, like I said, align with business hours. We need to talk to employers about, your peak times, what's your busiest times, and let's work around those when we're scheduling those classes. Shift changes, I mentioned to you, retention. Incentives and check-ins. It's always wonderful when the employers offer incentives. And a lot of times for a lot of our classes, they'll bring in breakfast, they'll bring in lunch, and I happen to have site visits occur on those days that the employer is going to bring in lunch or breakfast. They hadn't caught on that it's not a coincidence that I happen to show up on all those days. But those are the benefits that you have sometimes in your workplace classes. And then again, data sharing. You can all, with discussions and good communications, come and work together through consent forms and proper protocols to help you. Here, if we were to charge an employer for the classes, because we are under the umbrella of this grant, we do not have to charge the employers. Some programs may charge the employers. Here, this was just an estimate for a class that meets 13 weeks, twice a week for 10 students, 2 hours a day. And you can look at it either way. You can look at it and, hey, depending on the company that you're talking to and having the discussions with, maybe a small company, we're saving you almost $3,000 with these classes. And so they're jumping up. If you're talking to a big mega company with lots of money, then you are saying, guess what? For a minimal fee of $2,800, you can have an instructor come to your site with materials and everything in whole classes for your employees. So it just depends on what employer you're talking to and how you want to use that talking point to convince them to hold classes. Either way, the benefits really outweigh any cost associated with these classes. Next.
All right, thank you, Delia. Delia definitely is a great saleswoman. She's the bomb. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about successes. And so we'll be sharing a few success stories to close out the presentation. So we definitely want to highlight Wilkinson Center Taylor Farms. We nominated him for an award with the Workforce Board last year. And so our data from 2023 cohort, 42% of the employees going through the Taylor Farms cohort received raises and promotions due to the skills that they gained in class. For the Taylor Farms employees like Jose, the impact had been transformative. Before ESL classes, he had struggled to communicate with his supervisors and faced limited opportunities for promotions due to the lack of language. However, after completing the class, Jose no longer needed an interpreter and was promoted from dryer to lead in the packing area. His increased confidence, understanding, and communication skills allowed him to seize new opportunities and achieve a well-deserved salary increase. We also have Carmen, who faced similar challenges, initially fearful of engaging with her supervisors and feeling unrecognized within the company. After completing her ESL course, she received 2 promotions, becoming a quality assurance technician and later on a quality assurance clerk. Cameron's journey highlights how learning English opened many doors to more responsibilities, recognition, and salary increases. So the program definitely works and adds more confidence to the employees, and also the employer ends up benefiting as well.
And I want to just give a shout out to the Kinko. I mentioned them earlier in the presentation, but Kinko, I was so impressed at the commitment they have to their employees. As you can see in this picture, in this photo showing, all of those folks standing in the back, those are managers, those are directors, HR representatives, all surrounding, loving on these employees that have made the choice to go to class to improve their English literacy skills. Again, at Kinko, their main concern initially was with safety, and helping these students understand manuals and safety terminology and vocabulary within their companies. I was impressed when we got ready to end the class and we had a student showcase. All these folks were flown in. HR directors flying in. Oh, I flew in the night last night. Oh, really? Were you here for a meeting? No, we came in to celebrate the employees. So they actually paid airline tickets to come in. And sometimes you have classes and folks won't walk across the street to come celebrate. And these folks flew in to celebrate the employees. So big shout out to Kenco for being a wonderful workplace partner. Here's another workplace partner, AirVent. These folks actually wanted us to hold classes because they wanted to promote their employees into managerial positions, but they lacked the English skills necessary to do so. And so they wanted us to come and work with these individuals on their English skills, but also to help them with presentations. So they did a lot of presentations in class. And during the employee showcase, they actually presented to their managers and supervisors. Well, here we have Myra. She wanted to say a little bit. I told her about the presentation, and she said, "Hey, I'll send in a video link and say something on the call." So let's listen to Myra from AirVent.
At Servant, we believe in the development of our people. We believe it is a responsibility of our company to supply the tools and the resources for our employees to become stronger contributors in the organization. Our leads are an integral part of everyday operations at AirVent. We partnered with Irving ISD and the ESL literacy classes for their development. These classes have helped them learn new language skills and stronger communication. We are thankful for Delia and her team, and we look forward to a continued partnership in the future.
Right. Well, thank you for that, Myra. Shout out to AirVent. Here, I gathered a resource for you guys who are thinking about establishing workplace classes. This is a how-to guide there from Pro Literacy. It has everything you want to know about workplace classes, gives you a lot of resources that you can use. And then also, as I mentioned before, CASAS has the Employer Engagement Survey. And there's a link there to that survey, or you can just Google CASAS Employer Engagement Survey. They've given us permission to use this. But this is a great tool to use during your first contacts when you're trying to make those connections with those employers. Fortunately for us, as I mentioned, the Workforce Board makes those initial contacts, and they've created packets that they'll be issuing out, and it will include this engagement survey. Well, we have come to the end of the presentation, but we want to know if any of you out there have any questions for us. Now is the time.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat box. Feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand and ask your questions to Delia or Nancy. I want to thank them while you guys are thinking about what you want to say or ask, for Nancy and Delia to present this. This was very informative. I thought it was really great. While we're waiting for folks to decide whether they want to say anything or not, remember to go do your evaluation for this. The more you tell us about how well we do, the better we can modify and change and grow and be better for you.
And I'm reading the messages. Thank you guys. I'm glad it was informative for you. I really hope that you're able to take this and start building your workplace classes if you haven't already, and using some of the resources that we have provided. Nancy and I, you can contact us by email. We will answer emails, as you know, and many of you we know and we've already built relationships with. So, you can reach out to us if you have questions.
So if you're serious about that, can you all drop your email addresses in the chat so that they don't have to go through the long circle about trying to figure out how to get a hold of you?
Of course, adding it now. And thank you for all the love in the chat.
Right, it's there.
And if you didn't want to do the Scantron, Paula's going to go ahead and drop in the Billy link so that you can just click on it. If that fails, you can always just go back to where you launched from. Click down on the little arrow there under where it says launch. You should find something that says evaluate. You click on that one and you can fill out the survey. Well, if nobody else has any other comments or any other lovin's to give our great presenters, I'll go ahead and close out the room and have a great day.
Thank you.